that is kind of a monoculture
that's like the most simple version of the
space,
idea.
like a space that we see every day, that we pass industrial backspace, like something that you can't imagine anyone being sentimental about. So it's just inherently a
neutral,
like very neutral.
Yeah, like very neutral,
But
very
well known.
sterile, not abandoned, but definitely neglected. And so it's sort of like just playing into the idea of what if, for no fault of your own, not judgment or anything, what if you just accidentally ended up in that place forever? And like that's like the most simple version of the idea. And it's not a film, that's not a story. But over the years, like a lot of people have looked at that concept and created their own interpretations of it, and lots of written wikis and short stories about it, and short films and video games.
To a video medium and exploring it, and that somehow turned into this film after doing a whole series, and so really this film is somehow turned into this film.
Doing a whole series, and so really this film is a look at
these people who are living these very atomized,
what happens in the life of these people who are living these very atomized, lonely lives, and they come into contact with sort of a physical externalization that is very real of essentially like the unexplored, the sort of when you have nowhere left to go, there's sort of this internal space that opens up as an external space, and they kind of find themselves in there in a way.
Picking up on that, in the trailer we see basically two types of people: the ones that want to explore, the ones that don't want anything to do with it.
Yep.
So you as a creator, and I've always wanted to know this, and I can't believe I can ask you. I'm sure that in your creation you thought in this situation. Do you have your own plans when you have rooms, when you create this, like, I would do this? Does that go into the work?
Yeah, I mean, I think this must have been an exercise in a meta way of sort of doing this similar things to what the characters are doing, while obviously very removed from the actual any kind of threat to life. But I would say it's been like, I mean, I would definitely let the curiosity get the better of me. I know that I'd be able to leave it alone, and it would become like the only thing I'm focused on, probably until I somehow get my head around it. But that may or may not even be possible. So I think it would mess me up pretty bad.
Obsessively try to.
Would you secretly go into one if you found a bathroom right now?
No, that's what I mean. I would like obsessively just figure it out. It's alluring. It's not just. I think a lot of people find that it's almost more of a intriguing concept than simply a scary one. I think there's a lot of intrigue around the idea of a
person alone in a room, and that can be very profound if it's treated meditatively.
The simplest experience of a person alone in a room, and that can be very profound if it's treated meditatively, and it can be very destructive if it's like forced upon someone.
So I wanted to ask you, despite the will of exploration, whims are so dreadful, touch of this dread comes from the hum buzz of fluorescent lights. And how do you work this?
I mean, like the hum buzz is one of the most iconic elements of the place. It's like the wallpaper, carpets.
Yeah, I mean, like the hum buzz is one of the most iconic elements of the place. It's like the wallpaper, carpets, drop ceiling, and then frequency. In the drop ceiling, you've got these very faulty ballasts in these troffers that are humming at this constant frequency, seemingly forever, and it's inescapable. Everywhere you go, it's just like a grating sound, and I think that kind of just serves to, it just emphasizes how mediocre of a place it really is, and how grating but not violent it is. It's like constantly in an in-between state of feeling almost threatening, but there's no clear threat, so you almost start to invent them yourself. The sound team, we worked with.
The sound team, we worked with.
I'm really happy with those. It's I think in a theater, it's less than that. It's really.
Okay, yeah, I have to admit, I find it kind of relaxing. I don't know why.
Yeah, I could sleep. I have slept to it before. I've slept to it before.
Okay.
Incidentally.
So I wanted to ask you about.
You had a question about Blender, I remember.
About Blender, yeah. So you created this world digitally on Blender. How was it to move to a professional film set with a crew? How different was it? And do you miss sometimes to be able to tweak a little things here and there?
Well, we sort of addressed this film in such a way that it feels like it's building naturally off of what I've already been doing on YouTube for a long time. I work very solo normally, where I have for a long time, where I'll do the sound design and the score and the animation and the everything pretty much. But in this case, I found a way to sort of address the film changes in convention that I've learned a lot working on this. We definitely approach this in a way that we do. Like, we work with so many incredibly talented people on this film. Like, the people we worked with, like all the department heads, the crew, the cast, everyone is just, they really brought their all to it. And it was just like fun being there. It was just like working on this film. Everyone just enjoyed working on this film. And it was great. I think like Blender has been like an integral part of this film. Like at all levels, like the initial concept art, like in the pitch deck, all Blender concept art that I just used my normal pipeline for. And then when we went to pre-production, the sets I made in Blender, and then I handed over. I worked with the art department, and we just built exactly what was in Blender. So like all the sets in the film exist, like a full 3D replica of them. We did everything there. All storyboard stuff. That's all Blender. I worked with Jeremy Cox, our cinematographer, to sort of preview the lighting for everything, and so there's a lot of like preview stills for everything, the stuff in the final film. So thank you, Blender. Thank you, huge thank you, Blender.
Oh, bless Blender.
Thank you, Blender. Thank you, huge thank you to Blender.
I know I'm a big fan, and there's a big community creepy all of this, and this is one of those works. Some art that are bigger than the creator, right? Gets away from you, and it's full of new monster hypotheses and ideas. How do you balance that out?
New monsters,
like true to your vision, or do you do some fan service? Do you go, this is a great idea, I would have done this? How do you balance all of this?
Yeah, I personally,
this is a great idea.
Backrooms was kind of at a quiet point when I did the first short and when I started the web series for Backrooms. So there wasn't like a lot of interaction stuff at the time. It was pretty quiet. I wanted to try to faithfully adapt the original 4chan post for it and make something that held up to that and didn't like go crazy out of bounds or anything, and kind of just focused on what was working already, because I think inherently like, you can trace what works at all levels for Backrooms back to that first.
I agree, yes.
And I think like the simplicity of it is what works. But I would say generally speaking, it's just my personal philosophy to try to stay away from fan service. I would say generally speaking, as much as I love, I think having a plan, a confident plan from the very beginning of the project, knowing where the story is going to end up years from now, I feel like that's the best fan service you can give, over yourself trying to retcon and like I don't enjoy working that.
Try to please everybody, and then you're going to make everybody mad.
Yeah, I think like with this film in particular, we really wanted to find a version that would work for
I feel like there's been a
fans
plan that I think
of
like
my
with this film in
series,
particular,
fans of just Backrooms in general, because they are very distinct. No one really owns the Backrooms. It's just many interpretations. And then people who have never heard of the Backrooms. I think this film offers something for all of those. I think it works well.
Minecraft Xbox One Edition was just updated, which is surprising given the game was discontinued in 2017 when they encouraged people to move up to Bedrock Edition for free. This is a real message they put in the game, by the way, but they stopped updating the game until they redecided
I think all of this,
update the game, but only add skin
packs. They
added 7 separate updates to 7 separate skin packs, which concluded with CU56 in 2018. After that point, there were just 2 more updates, both of which did very minor things you would notice, except for the removal of the download the latest version of Minecraft for free button, which I think was a big improvement. However, interestingly, they left it in the options menu, as you can see right here. According to the Minecraft wiki, this is the latest update. However, there have been at least 2 updates since then, and although we know that the first of those updates was the one that removed the download Minecraft for free from the options menu, we do not know what the second update has done, or if there are any other secret features in either. I would imagine not. There is a mystery around this version of the game, and if 4J Studios don't tell us what it is, well, that would be lame. Minecraft Xbox One Edition was just
a... but so much of that is kind of like, there's a big aspect where it feels like humanity is starting to roleplay as itself in a way, and it's starting to get further and further from a feeling of connection to the world. And I think that atomization and being stuck in a
world, and I think
constantly rising industrial monospace.
And that sort of
it is everywhere. Like, the drop ceilings are such an effective way to cover a building, and they're in, you know, I don't even have a number for the majority of the world features drop ceilings, and I think that
I don't even have a number for,
you know, I think the Backrooms is kind of an externalization of that anxiety.
And I think
what
that
happens when you stare at a blank wall for too long, you start to hallucinate, and you start to find meaning in that hallucination.
I totally agree on that.
And I believe that's what makes the Backrooms so relatable. We've all been in that space. It might have been a classroom, a doctor's office, a hallway to get to the tax man.
It's like connective tissue.
Yeah, and we all have feelings. Maybe it was dread, maybe it was just being sick, or bored, but there's those feelings. But the Backrooms takes us into like a human experience. It's part of the human experience. And the original ones, we have this yellow room that everybody knows. But will you explore more of this aspect that connects us in the Backrooms?
I think this film does a really great job of, you know, foregrounding what I think people want the most up front. But then it does start to travel into some slightly more interesting, slightly different. It kind of shows us a little bit more under the hood of what this place really is, and you know, it's obviously, you know, under this fictional concept lies a deeper, you know, obsession with the world and again, like architecture and everything, but there's a lot of different spaces in this film,
and I think it's the magic. Those spaces, they're so objective, they become subjective. When you see that pool, it'll remind you of something.
Yeah,
that kind of ceiling, it'll remind you of something. We've all been there, but with our own experience.
Exactly, yeah, the context is disintegrated and put through a blender and ends up in the Backrooms. It's kind of just the world put through a blender and pieced together on the other side.
Copy paste.
A little bit, yes.
So Kane, we've gone from a 4chan post to a big Hollywood film. Do you think the internet has become an official place, an official source for modern
I don't see anyone
urban
really
legends?
I'm not the authority on this. I want to think it kind of always has been, as long as, you know, people have had a way to share stories. Like, the internet has been a place to do that, and I think it's only now that maybe you know, properties like this are being recognized as having larger audiences and larger commercial value and everything. So I think you'll see a bit more of a jump towards you know, path that Backrooms took to the screen. But I really firmly, like, I love the work I do on YouTube, and I love my YouTube audience, and like, I want to just like keep doing stuff on YouTube while doing stuff like this when it makes sense. I think YouTube is completely, I think you can get great creative fulfillment out of it, and I think there's a lot you can do in the way of setting up, you know, larger projects through that sort of pipeline. So I think it's very viable.
Yeah, I think so too. And speaking of new and old media, I'm an 80s kid, so I grew up with analog. And I think the Backrooms and the originals, you get this analog flavoring. Now that we have 8K and everything, it's perfect.
Why
and
is
every
everyone calling
pixel
Julian?
and OLED screens.
That's the name.
Do you think there's a connection or a yearning between what we are seeing and going back to the analog? Do you think it calls us?
When I said it was called Julian,
and
I said
it's
it was.
warmer? How do you see the both medias?
I think there's inherently, like, yeah, like being given all that more information in the image, all that detail, like it has really bad diminishing returns. It's like, like my favorite camera, like I think like the most fun I've had shooting is on like 1080p often. Like I usually only go up to 1080p with a lot of my stuff. I feel like, you know, not that it's not great to have things blown up on a big screen.
In the film, it's rare
you know,
there are
looks
more
great
than
and
one or
holds up there,
two people on
but generally
screen at a
speaking,
time. It's a pretty lonely
you know,
film.
I feel like the Backrooms absolutely weaponizes that nostalgia and, you know, takes that veneer, that fuzziness of the past and uses that visual to, you know, just complement the general overall themes of living in the shadow of a past that is, brain can't really store the past. It constantly changes what's being interpreted. It's reconsolidates the memories over and over again. And I think feeling that wear and that loss of information visually is just at least a subconscious and kind of, you know, heady way to look at it.
No, I think that was
I'm
our
just
last
streaming it, so
question,
that
Kane.
if
I
these
think
people take it down.
Okay,
I'll
so
take it.
yeah, we have to wrap, but it was so great to have you. Chicos, ¿les gustó?
This
Mira,
was
Kane
awesome.
Parsons.
Un aplauso para Kane.
We should take a picture.
Yeah.
Can we?
Thank you, guys.
Kane.
Great.
Kane, can we take a picture?
Oh, a
Yeah.
picture. Yeah.
So this is the camera. And there's another picture right at the back. Thank you so much, Kane. It was an honor.
28 de mayo, Backrooms. No se les olvide, 28 de
¡Vayan
mayo.
al cine, chicos!
What did you say?
La partida se está poniendo intensa. Justamente las torrecitas están de locura. Hay cartitas de este lado. ¿Qué está pasando, damas y caballeros? ¿Qué lo estoy viendo en las torres, señoritas? ¿Cómo se le está pasando?